B2B buying signals are getting harder to read in 2026. But I don't necessarily think that's because the signals aren't there. I think one of the biggest problems is that we're simply not patient enough to actually read them. We're consistently racing towards that finish line, get the lead, book the call, make the sale. But the thing is, in B2B, the finish line never ever arrives because the race never stops. A prospect might research you today, disappear for 3 weeks, come back, look at something else, compare you with someone else, and then eventually be ready. Those are all signals. But the problem comes when we see one early signal and immediately treat the prospect as they're ready to buy. And you can clearly see this in marketing today. In our own research in 2025, we looked at hundreds of marketing agencies' websites across the UK, and around 90% of them were using essentially the same type of CTA. Book a call, book a free call, tell us the problem, book a call. But what does it actually establish? It just tells you that someone was willing to fill out a form. It doesn't necessarily tell you how serious their problem is. And it certainly doesn't tell you how urgent they want to solve it. And when they suddenly fill out this form, everyone wants to speak to them. They start hounding them with emails, calls, follow-ups, because there is a fear that if you don't move quickly enough, someone else will get that prospect. And I think we need to slow that process down. Instead of asking, can we get this prospect onto a call? What you should be asking is this business actually ready? And how ready actually are they? That's a totally different question. We found a better way was to take a prospect through a value-led journey. Give them something genuinely useful at the end of the process. Something where they feel that completing the process was worth their time, even if they never buy anything from you. That's how we developed our AI growth diagnostic. The person going through the diagnostic isn't actually focusing on being sold to. They're focused on finding out that final result. They answer questions, the AI analyzes the information, it identifies where the potential problems are and gives them an action plan explaining what they can do actually about the problems. Meanwhile, the business is also learning. AI can access and indicate where the prospect appears to be a low, medium or high readiness. So you already know where you stand. So you're not simply looking for someone who's just filling in a form. You've got context, you've got intelligence, you've got a much better idea of what should happen next. And that CTA then comes afterwards. And importantly, it's there if the prospect actually wants to take things further. They don't actually need to press it for the business to have learnt something valuable about them. That's where AI human operating systems can become really, really interesting. The funnel captures the signals. AI interprets them. The operating system keeps the prospect and the intelligence of the follow-up connected. And then the human decides what to do. A low readiness prospect might need more time. A medium prospect might need more value and nurturing. And a high ready prospect might justify you had that direct conversation. And they don't all need the same response. And they certainly don't all need to be chased simply because they completed a form. Better B2B marketing results, they aren't necessarily going to come from reaching prospects faster. Sometimes you're going to come from slowing down long enough to understand what the prospect is actually telling you. Because the best prospect isn't simply the person who completed your CTA. It's the prospect whose signals tell you they're ready for what happens actually next.